The Ring 4, man. What an awesome card from top to bottom. No complaints. What's good, fight fans? Your Majesty speaking. So let's start from the top, man. And from the top, I mean Abdullah Mason and Noakes. I'm not gonna start with the fight before that. Um, I thought that Mason versus Noakes was hands down the most competitive fight on the card. And it's funny because I thought that that would probably be Norman versus Haney as far as from a competitive standpoint of back and forth action. Mason versus Sam Notes, man, that's a fight that I would love to see a rematch for. Sam Noakes gave Abdullah Mason the test that we wanted to see and Abdullah Mason have at that age to make sure that, yeah, you beating up a bunch of these young contenders and people like that, and you looking good and in dominant fashion, but who hasn't done that has been good? Everybody that has been good has looked good their first 14, 15 fights. It's normally when you step up in competition is when we start seeing the chinks in the armor. And I believe that I saw some when it comes to Abdullah Mason. Still a great fighter, still young, still got a lot to learn, but I would love to see him be more strategic. For him to be as gifted as a fighter as he is, and I say that from the ability to be able to do a little bit of everything. He and as well as Brian Norman, they both. Let me stay with Abdullah Mason. I'll get on Brian Norman when I move to that next fight. But I thought Abdullah Mason, he it seems like he tries to rush his performances, or he tries to have spectacular performances so that they all end kind of early. And I think that can be a recipe for disaster. The better you move up in competition. So, and if I'm not mistaken, I think I remember Shakur Stevenson telling Abdullah Mason in the fight where he got dropped in the first round that you got to be careful in the beginning of these fights. It don't matter who you fighting. Everybody's dangerous when they're fresh. And that was great. I thought that was great advice that Shakur gave Abdullah Mason that I thought he would have kind of listened to and paid attention to. But it seems to me as he's one of those long guys who has the ability to box and be smart those first 5 or 6 rounds before he starts to press on the gas and open up his arsenal. And I think eventually that'll be a recipe for disaster for him if he does not fix that. I think Sam Notes was very, very, very durable and a great opponent for Abdullah Mason at this level. I believe it should have shown Abdullah Mason that I can't just go in here and try to get these guys out of here the higher I go up in competition. You have to understand that boxing is a game of chess. It is a game of strategy. Yes, there are going to be times where you can just go in and bulldoze through your opponent, but it's going to be those times when that opponent is just as uh, uh, mentally driven as you are, just as hungry as you are, and maybe even just as skilled as you are. And a lot of times you'll get yourself in trouble going in there with that mentality. Sometimes you got to peck away at the ice before it starts to break. You know, sometimes you have to chew your food before you swallow it. No diddy. But I'm just trying to make the comparison of sometimes you got to, use your strategy. Understand your opponent. You know that Sam Notes is tough. Why go in there and try to let your whole arsenal off in the first 2 or 3 rounds? Take your time. Take some. You know he's a hard puncher. Take some of the steam off of his punches. Hard shots to the body, tying them up, leaning on them, getting them a little tired, taking some of the steam off. And then when you get in 6, 7, 8, and 9, you can kind of open up a little more because now his punches are coming a lot slower. Now his feet are moving a lot slower. Now those body shots done sucked wind out of him to where he can't do what he once did in round 1. So once again, the reason why Mason got dropped in that fight when he got dropped in is because he had no defensive responsibilities early on. And like Shakur told him, early on, you have to be defensively responsible. Don't underestimate nobody. But all in all, I thought it was a great fight. I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch. I think Sam Noakes went in there and did his thing. Once again, I'm one of those channels who like to give credit where credit is due. Sam Noakes, I would love to see him again. I think he put on a excellent performance. And like I said, I'm not one of those guys where if you lose, now I'm gonna shit on you because you lost. Nah, you go in there, you put up a great fight. It make people want to see you again. I'm pretty sure Sam Noakes grew some fans tonight. And once again, that's all you can ask for in this sport. You're not gonna win them all if you fighting the best, every time out. So congrats to Sam Noakes. You gained a fan in me. I think I've only seen him once before this fight. Abdullah Mason, I've already known about Abdullah Mason. I was already a fan, but I definitely hope that he pays attention to those flaws. And he gets hit a lot because he's so busy being offensive. So I just, like I said, pay attention to those flaws and fix those things, and he's gonna be okay. Sam Noakes gonna be okay. Let's move on. Jesse Rodriguez versus Martinez. Absolute whitewash. Bam Rodriguez is one of the best fighters in the world. He should be mentioned on the pound for pound list with the Usyks, the Crawfords, the Inoues, because the boy is fucking awesome. He whoops Sorong Visai. He whooped what's my man name? What's my man that beat Nonito Donaire? Damn. Juan Estrada. So Bam Rodriguez has proven at the tender age of 25 or 26 or whatever he is that he's one of the best in the world. Now, I thought that Martinez being a champion, it would be a little more pushback, but I expected Rodriguez to win. Now, I don't like how, once again, if you have been a listener of my channel from the Canelo and Bud fight, I'm not a big fan of people jumping weight classes to take fights. I believe that, yeah, there are some special fighters who are going to be able to get it done. But for the most part, when you look at boxing as a whole, 9 times out of 10, jumping weight classes ain't really a good thing without moving up the correct way. Now, Bam Rodriguez is at 118 pounds. Inoue is who they're hyping. That's all you heard all night. I want to see him fight Inoue. I want to see him fight Inoue. Inoue is at 122. Now, granted, it's only an 8-pound difference in pounds, but it's a 2 weight class difference. I think Inoue is possibly in the point where matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think Inoue is at 26. So yeah, it's a 8-pound difference in weight classes. I would much rather see Bam Rodriguez move up the proper way. Dominate 118, grow into the weight at 122, dominate that. And if Inoue is still there when you get to 126, then by all means, let's fight. But other than that, I don't really want to see him jump weight classes because guess what? If he jumps weight classes and lose, people going to shit on him. They're not going to give him the benefit of the doubt. You know how I know that? Because I watched Lomachenko versus Guillermo Rigondeaux. And when he jumped up there, when he didn't have to, nobody could beat Rigondeaux at that time in his weight class. But when he jumped up there and took that fight, nobody gave a shit about Rigondeaux after that. And to be honest, he got blackballed after that. They took his title. I never understood that. Now I don't want to get off subject, but they took his title when he moved up to the weight class. They took his title from 2 weight classes below because he lost that fight. Meanwhile, Lamont Roach is still holding on to his 130-pound title, and he's now fighting at 140. And a lot of these guys get to hold on to their titles if they move up in weight. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it didn't make sense to me. But Bam Rodriguez, great job. Love seeing the man fight. He got skills. He got great footwork. He got pop. You know what I'm saying? I was happy to see him finally get the dude out of there because it was starting to look like a sparring match. And that ain't good when you're trying to, you want action in these fights. Moving on to what I think should have been the main event, the fight of the night, beforehand, because of the amount of attention it was getting. I didn't see a lot of people look like they were pretty pretty much interested in the Benavidez versus Yard fight. Even though I think it turned out the way that I expected. But I thought Haney versus Norman was probably would have been the most competitive fight on the card. Now, I'm gonna spend a lot of time on this fight because I believe that this is the fight that most people care about, but I also want to break it down. First thing I want to do is I want to give Devin Haney the utmost credit and respect because, like I said in the video before this, and I may put it up after this video so you guys can listen to it, but Haney came out on the interview and said that he lost confidence in himself. And as I stated in that video, I know what it's like to hurt yourself or go through something and lose confidence in your ability to be able to do something and what it takes to be able to grind your way back. And so I gave Devin Haney a lot of credit in that video for his mental fortitude and his ability to be able to bounce back after such grueling defeat. And I say defeat because even though he didn't lose as far as his resume is concerned, he lost his confidence in that fight. And like I said, I don't want to get into the whether Ryan cheated or not. He got popped, he cheated, cool. But I'm saying not cool that he cheated, but I'm saying we passed that. I want to harbor on Devin Haney deserving the credit or getting the credit that he deserves because Haney, after being one fight removed from that Ryan Garcia fight and going in there and fighting Jose Ramirez, and a lot of people were saying that he had postpartum and he was, PTSD and he was gun shy and he was, looked scared to fight or looked scared to get hit. And for him in his very next fight to move up to 147 and fight who arguably you can say is the best champion of the guys who are still available there, because I don't think Mario Barrios is that good. And I don't even know who got one of the belts. It's some new dude. And who was the other person? Who gives a fuck? You know what I'm saying? Like at this point, so Brian Norman, I don't even know who the IBF guy is, but at this point, it ain't really nobody worth talking about at 147, really, other than Brian Norman Jr., before this fight. And so I gave Devin Haney a lot of credit for stepping up and taking that fight when he could have been the name in this fight for another Jose Ramirez or somebody else or Mario Barrios, a fight who we could guarantee that he was going to win that fight. He didn't do that. From what he's saying, he looked into fighting Boots. Boots said he was moving up or he wanted it at a catch weight. He turned it down and he took the next best opponent. And I want to make sure that he knows that he got respect from KINGBJT and Your Majesty on this side of town, because a lot of people don't do that. And that's what I lobby for in the sport. I want to see people take chances. And like I said, as fans, we have to respect these guys for going out here and taking these chances if that's what we're asking them to do. But respect to Devin Haney and respect to Brian Norman, because once again, he didn't have to take this Devin Haney fight. He could have fought a couple of bums and held on to his title and did what a lot of people did, had a homecoming fight and pity patted his way around just to hold on to his belt a little bit longer. And he didn't do that. So much respect to him as well. Now, to get into the fight, I thought round one was a telltale sign of how the fight was going to go. And I really didn't know who I thought was going to win this fight. I didn't even make a prediction. I think I may have been leaning towards Brian Norman. But once again, I'm one of those people where I pay attention to things that fighters do. And one of the things I saw from both fighters, I think they both were a bit nervous to start the fight off. I saw a lot of jitteriness from Haney. I also saw a lot of jitteriness from Norman Jr. Haney settled down much quicker than Norman Jr. did. And the reason why Norman Jr. got caught is because, once again, kind of like Abdullah Mason, where I'm trying to go in here and it's no setup. Once again, you get to a level where this guy is just as skilled as you are. You ain't just going to be able to go in there and land a left hook, a la Ryan Garcia with Tank Davis. Yeah, you able to get it off on this person, but Tank is going to be a lot more harder to hit because he understands he wants to hit me with a left hook. Devin Haney understood that too. And it seemed to me like Brian Norman was kind of resting his hat on landing a left hook instead of allowing yourself to get rid of the nerves, you know, like I said, feints, even if you fainted your way through a round just to kind of, you know, get yourself in that mode. Instead, he came out overly aggressive. And Devin Haney, being the smart, experienced fighter that he is, he kind of, it seemed like he knew that Brian Norman was going to put himself in a position where he was rushing based on that experience. And when people say, I've been at this level before, I know what, you know, I know what to expect, he don't. It's a lot of validity and truth to that, because once again, Brian Norman stepping up on that stage, you don't know what your nerves are going to be like. You know, it's one thing to walk out in the MGM Maryland with 2,000 people in there. It's another thing to walk out in a whole nother country and your opponent is Devin Haney, one of the best in the world. And if you've been in a sporting environment where I played sports all my life, so I know what it's like to be in an environment where there's a bunch of people looking at you and expecting you to perform. And I know how, depending on how high the energy is in the building, it can determine how fast you tire. Like a lot of that stuff, the energy can make you do stuff, or make you, if you're not experienced enough to be able to control your fears, or whatever the case may be, or your excitement, or your whatever you want to classify it as, whether it's fear, whether it's excitement. If you're not experienced enough to understand how can also work against you. And I think I saw that from Norman and his daddy, because I think the moment may have been too big. Now, I was a little irritated because I wanted to hear what was being said in the corner, and they didn't go to Brian Norman's corner until like round 5 or some shit, which I thought at that point was too late. But I wanted to hear what Senior was telling him, because the first thing I would have told him is relax yourself. Don't try to get it all in. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day, bro. Don't try to get it all in the first round. Take your time. Make sure you focusing on the shit that we focused on in the gym. If they focused on keeping your head off the line, varying your attack, changing your levels with your jab. You know what I'm saying? Feinting, using your foot feints, using your jab feints, using your backhand feints, doing things to kind of not allow a strategic fighter like Haney to catch on to your rhythm. Once again, I don't know what was being said, but based on what Brian Norman was doing in the fight, I'm assuming he didn't say it. So, and y'all can let me know, maybe y'all heard something that I didn't hear, but I didn't hear Pop saying nothing that was worth talking about in the corner, except for you got to get him. Go get him. You know what I'm saying? Like, you down, you got to get him. Then he whispered some shit in his ear, which they picked up on. You got to go for broke. But I always feel like as a trainer, you should be able to tell your fighter go for broke, but also be able to tell them how to do it. Don't just say go for broke because you go out there and you put yourself in harm's way. You know what I'm saying? Tell him, look, this is what Devin is doing. He is feinting you. When he feints you, make sure you feint back. Or when he feints, make sure you jab to the body. Tell him something so that he actually knows what to do and he's not out there guessing. There's already a lot going on in that environment for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially for this being his first time. And so that's why I say I think the pressure got to Norman and his daddy. Now, I do believe that people hyped up how much Devin Haney dominated the fight. I think that a lot of people was high on the fact that Haney got the knockdown early on and was able to kind of coast a couple of those early rounds to where he built up a decent enough lead. But however, I do believe that Brian Norman was winning a lot of those middle rounds. Maybe 3 or 4 of the middle rounds I gave to Norman. So I gave Norman 1, and I also gave Norman maybe 3 rounds in the middle. And then the end of the fight was like Devin Haney was just posing in front of him. I think he felt like the knockdown was enough, and I think I've done enough, so let me cruise to a victory. And so for the people that's complaining about the wide scorecards, I don't understand why. Like, yeah, you give Haney the knockdown, but a lot of those rounds, Haney didn't do much. Now, there were rounds where Haney was sneaking shit in on the inside, but for the most part, and once again, I believe judges and fans judge stuff based on body language. And Brian Norman's body language did not say that he was winning the rounds. But that's why you have to be able to have discernment to understand. Yeah, I understand he looked tired, but guess who else looked tired? Sam Noakes. It didn't change the fact that he was working on that inside. And so I think people got to get out of being fans of boxers and actually look at what's going on in the sport. I don't care that Andre Ward was mad at the scorecards. If you really look at that fight and pay attention to the fight, not just pay attention to the person that you like and don't ride everything that person is doing, but pay attention to the fight and go look at that fight, and you'll see that Haney wasn't doing a lot after round maybe 4 or 5. After round maybe 4 or 5, Haney started coasting. Now, I'm not saying Brian Norman was whooping his ass, but I thought Brian Norman was doing more work in those rounds, and I thought he was winning some of those middle rounds. So I may have gave Brian Norman 4 or 5 rounds, but when you factor in Devin had the knockdown, it kind of throw the scores off. So I'm not mad at Devin's win, but I definitely believe he won the fight. But for the people that's complaining about the scorecard being 114, 113, 114, 113, or whatever it was, boxing is subjective. It's going to look at Devin Haney stuff and say, that was a clean round for Devin Haney. Just like it's going to be people that look at Brian Norman's work and say, hold on, nah, he just working on the inside. Devin ain't throwing that many punches. Devin kind of posturing. He waiting a lot. Devin was waiting a lot in the middle and towards the end of that fight. And so while I am satisfied with Devin getting the victory, I don't think that the blowout was what people thought made it seem like it was. Now, the main event. Hold on. Matter of fact, congratulations to Devin Haney and Brian Norman. You know, I appreciate both of y'all guys for even taking this fight at this time. Both of y'all 25, 26 years old. It's rare that we get these type of matchups with both fighters being around that age or in that prime stage of their career. So big shout out to Haney and Norman Jr. Now, main event, David Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde. I knew the outcome of this fight when I first heard it. And it's partially because I think Anthony Yarde is a decent fighter, but I don't think he's a top level fighter. And I believe that in my mind, I thought that he was going to gas out towards the end of the fight and end up getting stopped. Which happened, but like I said, I expected Anthony Yarde to try to impose his will on David Benavidez. You're not beating David Benavidez on the back foot all night. David Benavidez is a fighter that you have to make him respect you enough to stop moving forward and pressing you out. If you're going to just keep backing up all night, 9 times out of 10 you're going to lose to David Benavidez. That's just the end all be all. He is like that train that gets started. Most of the time, your best bet is early on. Once he start moving and his body get loose and he start firing them shits off, you can damn well wrap it up. And that's just what it is. He is that guy, like kind of like how Earl Spence was, where if you're gonna get him, you better get him early. Because once he get in that mode and he get the moving, you can damn well is almost over. Him, Bam Rodriguez, David Benavidez, Errol Spence Jr., those guys, they slow starters, but once they get started, they're going to tax that ass. That's just what it is. Now, I thought Anthony Yarde started off well. Like I said, with Mason and with Brian Norman, when you're fighting somebody that good, you can't just come out balls to the wall. You have to be able to set certain things up. Now, whether that's being on your back foot and stabbing to the body, once again, changing your levels of your jabs to the chin, to the head, to the top of the head, to the chest, to the belly, feints, all of those things set up things later on in the fight. David Benavidez, if you don't give him something to think about, or you're not popping him with some shit that's like in DC, we call it, if you ain't got no fuck you on your punches, you got to have some fuck you on your punches. You know what I'm saying? Like, the way Anthony Yarde was throwing punches was as if he was just trying to win on the scorecards. You're not beating David Benavidez like that. You're gonna have to go in there and rumble, bro. Like, you look at Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant was doing well in that fight early on. Good, quick movement. And they had David Benavidez swinging at air. And David Benavidez was looking like a novice early on in that fight. But once he got the ball rolling, he is like a rock that's gaining steam coming down the damn hill, that's also picking up extra rocks with it as it's coming down that hill. And so I thought Anthony Yarde probably should have boxed for the first 3 or 4 rounds, and then he should have started sitting down on some shit. You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, David Benavidez is not going to respect none of that stuff. Now, I hear them saying that David Benavidez wants to be the face of boxing. And I think that from a talent standpoint and how he fights, and, you know, him being a Mexican fighter, he would definitely have a fan base behind him. But the reason why I don't think that David Benavidez is or will be the face of boxing is not anything that he can help. And I'm going to do a video on that coming up, because I think that David Benavidez has all that it takes, but it's a specific reason why I don't think he will take over being the face of boxing. And but much respect to Turkey Al-Sheikh and Riyadh Season and everybody that has something to do with this card. Much respect to all the fighters that took these fights, because like I said, every fight was a good fight except for Jesse Rodriguez. You know, he went in there and destroyed Slim and kind of pity patted with him. I thought he probably should have got him out of there a lot earlier. I got high expectations for Jesse Rodriguez. So yeah, he got the knockout, but I thought it probably should have came around 4 or 5 and you know, spectacular. But and it was a spectacular knockout. The pull counter to let him get comfortable, and then the pull counter left hand, it was fire. All in all, great card. I can't wait to see the next Riyadh Season card. The Inoue card, I don't know if the whole card is going to be fire, but I'm looking forward to this Inoue fight. But most important, man, boxing won tonight. When it's all said and done, 5 or 6 great fights, because Mel was before Abdullah Mason, and he looked pretty decent too. Young kid out of Jersey. But all in all, man, great fight. I did want to hop on here and give my recap and my thoughts on the card and on all the fights. Much respect to Devin Haney and Brian Norman Jr. for, you know, accepting that fight, because, like I said, that's a fight where both of those guys are mid-20s in their prime. And that's all you can ask for as a fan of the sport of boxing, is people to accept these fights. I'm glad we getting out of the Floyd Mayweather era where people just trying to hold on to their O's. People actually want to prove that they're great, and I can respect that. But that's my time tonight, man. If y'all have not subscribed to my channel, please do so. Please hit the notification bell so that you will be notified when I drop future videos, and also share the video. And until next time.